Zion, Illinois, a quiet, unassuming town just north of Chicago, gently tucked along the edge of Lake Michigan. To most, it's just a dot on the map, a peaceful suburb where life moves slowly and predictably. It's the kind of town where neighbors wave to each other from their front porches, kids ride their bikes in circles around the block without worrying, and weekends are filled with barbecues, family outings, and church on Sunday mornings. In Zion, people feel safe, so safe that locking your doors at night can seem unnecessary. It's a place where tragedy feels distant, something that only happens somewhere else, until it doesn't.
Subscribe to Crime Whispers.
Laura Hobbs was just 8 years old, and Crystal Tobias was 9. Two young girls who lived right down the street from each other, their bond as tight as any siblings. From the moment they met, they were like magnets drawn together by shared curiosity, a love for adventure, and the unspoken understanding that only best friends share. After school, they'd drop their backpacks at home and meet outside within minutes. On weekends, they'd ride bikes, play tag at the park, and share snacks, secrets, and silly stories. Their friendship was pure, easy, and joyful, the kind that grows naturally between kids who trust each other completely. May 8, 2005 was a warm and breezy Mother's Day in Zion. Families gathered to celebrate, sharing laughter, hugs, and heartfelt moments. Laura and Crystal spent the afternoon doing what kids do best, running through the grass, holding tightly to the strings of brightly colored kites that danced and dipped against the sky. The wind off the lake carried their giggles across the park. They were surrounded by love, by parents, grandparents, and siblings, all enjoying the sunshine together. But like any kids full of energy, they wanted more. After the kites had been packed away and picnic blankets folded, the girls asked if they could ride their bikes to the park down the street, a familiar spot just a few blocks away. Their parents said yes, reminding them to be home by dinner. It felt like just another ordinary moment, but it would be the last time they'd see their daughters alive. Evening settled over Zion, and with it came an uneasy quiet. When Laura and Crystal didn't come home at the time they promised, their parents' first thought wasn't panic. Maybe the girls had lost track of time. Maybe they were at a neighbor's house. But as the minutes turned into hours and phone calls went unanswered, that worrying began to grow, slowly at first, then all at once. Parents checked with friends, drove up and down the streets, and called their names through the fading light. By nightfall, the entire neighborhood was in motion. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Search dogs were brought in. Police joined the effort. People combed the woods and parks, holding on to hope. But the girls were gone, and there were no signs of where they might be. The fear in the air was heavy, pressing on every heart that night. The sun rose on Monday, casting a golden light over a town already worn down by fear and sleeplessness. Just after 6 a.m., Jerry Hobbs, Laura's father, was out searching, desperate, hollow-eyed, clinging to the hope that maybe, somehow, she'd be found safe. As he walked along a familiar path near the park, he noticed something just beyond the trail, tucked in the dense brush. What he found would forever change his life. There, lying side by side in the dirt, were the lifeless bodies of his daughter, Laura, and her best friend, Crystal. Both had been brutally stabbed, Laura 20 times, Crystal 11. Their small, innocent bodies, discarded like they didn't matter. The horror of that moment sent shockwaves through the town, and the peace Zion once knew vanished instantly. In the hours following the discovery, grief quickly gave way to suspicion. The man who found the girls, the grieving father, had a criminal past. Jerry Hobbs had a history, including violent charges and time served for a prior assault. To detectives, it was too coincidental, too convenient. They saw a narrative forming, a troubled man with a history of violence, emotionally unstable, finding the bodies of 2 girls in the woods. Instead of expanding their investigation, they narrowed their focus. Almost immediately, Jerry Hobbs was taken in for questioning. And what followed was a psychological breakdown and interrogation lasting over 20 hours, during which Jerry, emotionally destroyed, sleep-deprived, and in shock, was pushed to confess to a crime he insisted he didn't commit. Inside that small interrogation room, Jerry Hobbs was a man unraveling. He was grieving his daughter's murder while being accused of causing it. Detectives told him there was no other explanation. They told him they had proof, even when they didn't. They used his confusion and despair against him. And after nearly a full day without food, rest, or legal counsel, Jerry cracked. He said what they wanted to hear. He signed a statement claiming he stabbed Laura after a fight and attacked Crystal when she tried to intervene. But it didn't take long for Jerry to retract his confession. He told his lawyer he was pressured, misled, emotionally broken, but the damage was done. The state had its confession and they were ready to make it stick. As Jerry Hobbs sat behind bars, the months stretched into years. His legal team fought to prove his innocence, but the weight of the confession hung over the case like a shadow. Then, finally, a breakthrough. Jerry's defense pushed for independent DNA testing, something that had been neglected for years. What they found shook the case wide open. Under Laura's fingernails, in the evidence collected from her clothing, was DNA that did not belong to Jerry. It was someone else entirely. Someone who had never been brought in for questioning. Someone still out there. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, in Arlington, Virginia, another story was unfolding. In July 2009, Amanda Snell, a 20-year-old Navy petty officer, was found dead in her barracks on the military base. Her death was puzzling. At first, it was ruled accidental, blamed on medical issues. But something didn't feel right to investigators. There were bruises, signs of pressure, inconsistencies. A quiet suspicion started to build. This wasn't a natural death. It was something darker. In the months that followed Amanda's death, a chilling pattern began to emerge in Arlington. Multiple women reported being attacked by a man driving a beige Dodge Durango. The details varied, but the fear was the same: sudden, violent assaults that left victims traumatized. The Arlington police began piecing together witness accounts, street camera footage, and vehicle sightings. The evidence pointed to one man, Jorge Avila Torres, a soldier stationed on the same base where Amanda had died. When police arrested him and searched his vehicle and living quarters, they uncovered a disturbing array of evidence items belonging to the victims, DNA traces, and evidence that tied him directly to the assaults. But that wasn't all. Behind bars, Torres made a fatal mistake. Thinking he could trust his cellmate, he began to talk. The man in the next bunk wasn't just another inmate, he was a confidential informant. In their conversations, Torres described Amanda Snell's murder in chilling detail: how it happened, what he did, what she said. Details only the killer could have known. The confession was recorded and used as a key piece of evidence. Combined with DNA matches from Amanda's case and the assaults, the prosecution had what they needed. Jorge Avila Torres was convicted and sentenced to death for Amanda's murder. But the story didn't end there. When Torres' DNA was entered into the national database, it triggered a long-dormant match, one connected to a case 4 years earlier, hundreds of miles away. The DNA found under Laura Hobbs' fingernails was a perfect match to Jorge Avila Torres. The man who had terrorized women in Arlington had also taken the lives of 2 little girls in Zion, Illinois. Investigators confirmed that Torres had lived in Zion at the time of the murders. He knew Laura, he knew Crystal. And somehow, during the original investigation, he had slipped right through the cracks. With this new, irrefutable evidence, the truth finally came to light. In 2010, after spending 5 years in jail for a crime he did not commit, Jerry Hobbs was released. The charges were dropped. The state had no choice. But freedom could not erase the pain. Jerry had lost his daughter, his dignity, his peace of mind. He had been vilified, humiliated, broken, and now all he had left was the burden of trying to rebuild a life that had been unjustly taken from him. Even though Torres was already on death row in Virginia, the state of Illinois moved forward with its own charges for the murders of Laura and Crystal. Prosecutors were determined to hold him accountable for what he had done in Zion. Faced with overwhelming forensic evidence and his own criminal record, Torres agreed to a plea deal. In 2018, he officially confessed to the murders. In exchange, he received a life sentence without the possibility of parole and was transferred to a maximum security federal prison. There would be no trial, no appeal, no more hiding. The man who had stolen to innocent lives and let another suffer in his place would finally spend the rest of his life behind bars. The people of Zion never forgot. The pain of that Mother's Day in 2005 still lingers in the air, the loss of two bright, joyful girls who never made it home. Memorials were held, playgrounds renamed, and murals painted in their honor. But for many, the grief is tangled with frustration. Questions remain. Why wasn't the DNA tested sooner? Why was the investigation so narrow? Why did it take 5 years to see what should have been clear from the start? The answers lie in a justice system that too often values quick closure over careful truth. Jerry Hobbs was eventually awarded an $8 million settlement for his wrongful imprisonment, a sum meant to compensate him for lost time, lost freedom, and the unbearable loss of his daughter. But no amount of money can truly make a man whole. Since his release, Jerry has struggled battling substance abuse, trauma, and the heavy weight of a justice system that failed him. His story isn't just about innocence. It's about the cost of being ignored, the price of being misunderstood, and the permanent scars left by injustice. This case, this tragedy, is not just a story of two young girls lost too soon. It's also a sobering look at how wrongful convictions happen. It's a reminder that confessions without evidence are not justice, that tunnel vision can blind good people, and that the system must be held to a higher standard if it is to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. Laura Hobbs and Crystal Tobias deserve to grow up, to ride their bikes through the streets of Zion without fear. Their lives were stolen, and for years, their families were denied not just justice, but the truth. If this story moved you, if it made you think, or feel, or want better from the world, then let it be more than a moment. Let it be a reason to demand fairness in our justice system, a reason to listen, to question, and to care. Please take a second to like this video, share it with others, and leave a comment about how stories like this can drive real change. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories that matter. And if you believe in justice, in truth, and in the power of awareness, help us keep telling these stories. Your voice matters, and together, we can be louder than the silence. We can shine a light into the dark corners of the system and speak up for those who were silenced. Thank you for watching.